Have you ever felt that love and the dreams you once promised are slowly fading, as if everything has become just a routine? Let's step into this slow story together to rediscover hope and meaning. Rainy morning in Copenhagen. The rain taps gently against the window in Copenhagen. Outside, bicycles glide past in their raincoats, cafes prepare warm coffee, and life moves on as usual. But inside one small apartment, something feels strangely heavy. At the kitchen table sits our character, holding a cup of strong, black Danish coffee. Across the room, their partner flips through a newspaper. No words, no arguments, just silence. And silence, as you know, can be far more dangerous than conflict. It doesn't announce itself. It slowly fills the space until you realize you're living beside someone, not with them. This morning, the rain feels like a mirror. Each drop whispers a question. Do you remember your vows? Do you remember why it all began? Once, on a wedding day, promises were spoken, bright, unforgettable. Yet over time, daily routines, work, and life's quiet weight pushed them aside. Not through anger. Not through betrayal. Just forgetting. Scientists say memory fades when it isn't revisited. A vow left unspoken becomes like chalk washed away by rain. That's why so many couples wake up one day unable to recall the sound of their own voices promising forever. Still, the human heart remembers. Deep down, we are wired to seek connection. That's why emptiness feels painful. It's not weakness, it's biology. On this rainy Copenhagen morning, our character feels it too, a quiet longing for something once promised, something still alive, waiting to be noticed again. This is where our story begins. Not with shouting, not with heartbreak, but with rain. A simple morning that asks a heavy question. Did we forget what truly matters? The Forgotten Vows. Wedding days are supposed to be unforgettable. The music, the flowers, the way two people stand in front of everyone and say, "I promise." And yet, years later, many of those promises slip quietly into the background, like photos fading on a wall. Our character remembers flashes of that day in Denmark, candles glowing, laughter echoing, the nervous joy of holding hands. But strangely, the actual words, the vows themselves, feel distant, almost erased. Was it about love forever? Was it about standing together through rain and storm? The memory is blurry, like watching an old film with missing frames. Psychologists explain this with something simple. We don't forget because our vows are unimportant. We forget because life is noisy. Bills, work deadlines, tired evenings, even the weather, little by little, they cover the words we once shouted with pride. Memory, after all, is like a muscle. What you don't exercise, you lose. And here lies the quiet tragedy. A marriage rarely breaks in one dramatic moment. More often, it fades because two people stop reminding themselves why they chose each other in the first place. They stop speaking the words that once lit their hearts on fire. On this rainy morning, the realization stings. The forgotten vows are not just about words, they are about lost meaning. To forget them feels like forgetting yourself. the version of you that believed in love, in courage, in beginning again. But here's the hopeful twist. Forgetting is not the same as losing. Just as a photo can be restored, so can a vow. Memory can be sparked by a song, a smell, or even a single sentence spoken with sincerity. And sometimes, all it takes is choosing to say again what was once said long ago. So the question hangs in the air. If you once promised forever, can you learn to promise again, this time with deeper eyes and steadier hands? Daily life routine. Life in Denmark often looks like a postcard. People riding bicycles through narrow streets, candles glowing in windows, families gathering around fresh bread and hot coffee. But behind this peaceful rhythm, everyday life can become a quiet trap. Our characters' mornings are predictable, cycling to work in the drizzle, stopping at a small bakery for rugbrot and cheese, then greeting neighbors with polite but short hedge, godmorgen. Everything feels efficient, calm, almost too calm. Like moving through a script that repeats every day, this routine is not bad. In fact, it is safe and stable. Yet stability has a shadow. When every day looks the same, the mind begins to drift. Conversations with a partner shrink to practical questions. Did you buy milk? What time is the train? Slowly, the spark that once made daily life exciting becomes muted. Science gives us a clue here. The brain craves novelty. When something is new, dopamine, the motivation chemical, lights up, making us pay attention and feel alive. But once the brain marks something as familiar, it stops giving energy. That's why a new hobby feels thrilling in week 1 but dull in week 10. The same principle applies to relationships. Without small surprises, even love becomes background noise. For our character, Danish daily life has become just that, cozy, quiet, predictable, and strangely empty. The vows, once bright, now hide under layers of laundry, emails, and grocery lists. It's not that love disappeared, it's that routine wrapped it in silence, and yet, within this silence lies possibility. Because routines can either numb us, or they can be broken open. Sometimes it takes only one small change, a handwritten note on the fridge, an unexpected walk together in the rain, to remind us that even in daily life, love can breathe again. The question is, will our character notice this before the silence becomes permanent? The silent distance. Silence in a relationship is rarely just silence. It is a language of its own. And in our character's home, the silence has stretched so long it now feels like another person sitting at the table. Conversations have become practical, almost mechanical. Did you lock the door? What's for dinner? Don't forget the umbrella. These words are useful, yes, but they carry no warmth. The laughter that once filled the kitchen has thinned into quiet breathing, the clinking of forks, and the sound of rain outside. Psychologists call this phenomenon emotional distance. It doesn't happen overnight. It grows slowly, like fog creeping into a valley. At first, you don't notice. Then, one day, you realize you can barely see the mountain that used to stand right in front of you. In Denmark, people value personal space, respect for privacy, and calmness in relationships. These are beautiful traits. But when distance becomes too quiet, love can feel more like cohabitation than connection. Living side by side is not the same as living together. Science explains why this silence feels so heavy. The human brain is wired for social interaction. When we are ignored, or when our signals go unanswered, the brain interprets it as pain. The same neural pathways that process physical injury light up when we feel emotionally disconnected. That's why a cold silence can sometimes hurt more than a sharp argument. Our character feels it now. Not anger, not hatred, just absence. And absence has weight. Sitting at the dinner table, they glance at their partner and wonder, when did we stop talking about dreams? When did silence become our mother tongue? But here is the twist. Silence can destroy, but it can also invite. Sometimes, all it takes is one brave sentence spoken into the void. I miss you, to crack the distance open. The question remains, will anyone dare to speak first? Or will the rain outside keep talking louder than their hearts inside? An unexpected reminder. Sometimes, life hides reminders in the smallest corners. On another gray afternoon, while searching through a drawer for something unimportant, a receipt, a pen, our character's hand touches an old envelope. The paper feels worn, the edges soft. Inside lies a wedding photo and a card from years ago. The photo is simple. Two young faces glowing under Danish summer light, eyes full of promise. Behind them, guests laugh, holding glasses of sparkling wine. The card carries faded handwriting. Forever starts today. The words, once bold, now look almost fragile, like they could vanish if touched too hard. At that moment, something stirs. Memory is strange. It doesn't return in order. It returns in fragments. The sound of a church bell, the smell of roses, the nervous beating of two hands clasped together. Forgotten vows suddenly whisper again, carried back not by logic, but by ink and paper. Science tells us that physical objects, photos, letters, even scents, can trigger memory more powerfully than words alone. The brain ties emotions to sensory cues, which is why the smell of cinnamon might throw you back into childhood, or a melody can reopen a wound you thought had healed. For our character, this fragile card is not just paper, it is a time machine. Sitting with the photo, they feel a mix of warmth and ache. Warmth for what was real. Ache for what has slipped away. The distance in the present collides with the closeness of the past, and suddenly the silence in the house feels unbearable. But this reminder is not cruel. It is a spark. It says, you once loved. You once promised. You once believed in forever. And if you once did, maybe you still can. The rain outside continues, but inside, something has shifted. The vows may have been forgotten in daily routine, but they are not gone. They are waiting, quiet, fragile, but alive. The question now, will this reminder become a memory to weep over, or a reason to begin again? Rediscovering small moments. Love does not always return with fireworks. Sometimes, it returns in small, almost invisible ways. After finding the wedding photo, our character begins to notice little cracks of light in the routine. moments that had always been there, but had gone unseen. One evening, while cooking dinner, they decide to chop vegetables together instead of separately. At first, it feels awkward, knives clinking, no words spoken. But then, a joke slips out. A small laugh follows. It's not the roaring laughter of the past, but it is something. And something is enough to remind them that connection can grow quietly, like herbs in a windowsill pot. The next day, the rain is steady again, and instead of cycling alone, they suggest walking together. The umbrella is small, too small, forcing shoulders to brush. At first, it's uncomfortable, but slowly the silence between them softens. Words appear, simple ones. The rain smells fresh today. Yes, it does. Tiny, almost ordinary sentences, but they carry weight. Because sometimes, love hides not in grand speeches but in the courage to speak at all. Science backs this up. Research in relationships shows that micro-moments of connection, eye contact, a shared smile, a touch on the arm, can release oxytocin, the bonding hormone. These micro-moments may seem small, but the brain doesn't treat them as small. The brain treats them as proof, I am not alone, and so, slowly, the small moments gather. A shared cup of coffee. A hand reaching across the sofa. A quiet thank you spoken before bed. None of it looks dramatic enough for a movie. But in real life, these are the sparks that keep the fire alive. Our character begins to realize, maybe love was never lost. Maybe it was simply buried under routine, waiting for someone to notice. The question now is simple, yet difficult. Will they choose to keep noticing? The true meaning of love. For years, people are taught to think love is about grand gestures, roses, surprise trips, long speeches. But on quiet Danish mornings, our character learns a different truth. Love lives not in fireworks, but in the rhythm of everyday life. One evening, while folding laundry, they glance at their partner and realize something simple yet powerful. The true meaning of love is not in words spoken once, but in actions repeated daily. Love is brewing coffee for someone before they wake up. Love is fixing a broken bike light without being asked. Love is listening, even when the story is long and the day is short. Psychologists call this companionate love. Unlike passionate love, which burns hot and fast, companionate love is steady and enduring. It doesn't scream, it hums. It doesn't blind you, it lights the way slowly. And science shows that couples who focus on small, consistent acts of care report deeper happiness than those chasing endless excitement. Our character begins to see the Forgotten Vows in a new light. They were never really about promising big, dramatic things. They were about promising presence. Promising to stay when life felt ordinary. Promising to choose each other again, even when nothing special was happening. The rain in Copenhagen keeps falling, but now it feels different. It no longer mirrors emptiness. It feels like a soundtrack to something alive. Because love, in its truest form, is not about avoiding routine. It is about filling routine with meaning. This realization doesn't erase the years of silence. It doesn't magically fix everything. But it gives a compass. It shows a way forward. Because once you understand that love is in the smallest gestures, you stop waiting for fireworks, and you start noticing the flame that was never gone, and maybe that is the secret. Love doesn't need to be found again. It only needs to be remembered. A promise renewed. The rain has not stopped. Yet, inside the apartment, something has changed. On the table sits the old wedding photo, no longer hidden in a drawer. Our character and their partner look at it together, quietly at first, then with soft smiles that had been absent for years. There are no dramatic speeches, no orchestra swelling in the background. Just two people, sitting side by side, finally daring to break the silence. One of them speaks first. I forgot the words we promised. But I don't want to forget you. It is a simple sentence, but it lands like lightning. Because sometimes, love does not need poetry. It only needs honesty. And honesty, spoken at the right moment, can renew what time has tried to erase. Science tells us that relationships thrive not on perfection, but on repair. Every couple experiences distance. The key is whether they choose to repair the bond, even in small ways. A sincere apology, a gentle touch, a new promise. These are the stitches that hold love together. So they begin again. Not with vows shouted in front of a crowd, but with vows whispered across a kitchen table in Copenhagen. Promises like, I will try to notice you. I will choose you each morning. I will not let silence speak louder than us. The rain outside softens, as if listening. And for the first time in a long while, the silence inside the home is no longer empty. It is full of breath, of presence, of hope. This is what renewal looks like. Not erasing the past, but carrying it forward. Not pretending nothing was forgotten, but deciding to remember again, because love, at its core, is not about never breaking. It is about breaking and choosing to mend. And sometimes, that new promise is stronger than the first. Love is not found once, it is chosen again and again, even in the quietest moments.